Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Irish Mike's Farm Table Podcast. You can find the podcast on all the major platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. We hope you will subscribe and rate us as you enjoy the content that we work so hard to deliver. As with all episodes, this one is brought to you by Lakejoy Farmstead, our little farm northeast of Seattle, near Lakejoy in Carnation. Lakejoy Farmstead is the home of our Black Clover Cattle Company grass-fed beef, pastured pork, and poultry program, our line of barbecue rubs and bitters, as well as our farm-roasted coffee. You can find out more information about our upcoming classes, events, and so much more at lakejoyfarmstead.com. Well, Ryan from Steel Wheel Farm, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, really glad to have you again. Known you, certainly of you, not a ton personally, but again, like we mentioned before, we know a lot of the same people, and we see your work in our community on different shelves, across different stores and places, and you've got a really rich history in the Snoqualmie Valley. If you don't mind telling us just a little bit about your personal history, your family, and kind of lead that into you founding Steel Wheel Farm.
Absolutely. I'll just start off by saying my love of farming started very young. I grew up in Minnesota, and I was in love with tractors and farming because it was everywhere around me. And I had the opportunity to help out on a dairy farm. It was a small farm, but I got a little bit of a taste of what farming looked like and got to drive my first tractor, got to milk a cow, got to drive a skid steer, do all this really fun things like jump in a silage pit. It was a good place to be a kid, and I was obsessed with tractors and machinery like most little boys, and we moved to Washington my first year of high school, my family and I. So I didn't really think about farming too much when we moved to Washington, but I went to school in Woodinville and graduated high school in 2001, and then went to college to study 3D animation.
Oh, wow!
That time, and got my degree kind of expedited. It was a 4-year degree in 3 years, and I was living at home with my folks. I went to school in Everett, and I had landscaped on and off throughout the summers and most of the year while I was in school. And after school, I tried to find a job in the industry and had a really hard time. So my family didn't grow up on a farm, and my parents aren't farmers. My grandparents aren't farmers. So I never really thought about it, but after college, I had moved in with a couple of buddies in Duval, and we were going up hiking in the mountains, and I was going through Gold Bar, and I found an antique tractor for sale, and it was unlike any tractor I've ever seen. So I was like, I gotta stop. So we pulled off the side of the highway and met this old guy who was selling this vintage Oliver tractor. And I thought, man, this is really cool. Why do I not know anything about Oliver tractors? So I started doing this deep dive into this antique tractor, and I think I just had to have it. So they say old tractors find you, you don't find them. So I scooped it up, brought it home, and we luckily had some space in the garage. So I tore into it and started rebuilding it and repainting it, doing all kinds of stuff. And I didn't have a mentor or anything in the vintage iron world, so I looked into joining a vintage iron club, and there was one in Redmond, based in Redmond, and I gave them a ring, and they actually had a meeting that night. So one of the guys that was an officer of the club, he gave me a ride to the meeting, and I met a bunch of people that were into old iron and tractors. And that's kind of where it started. I was like, oh yeah, I love tractors and I love farming. Like, let's try to figure this out. So it just so happened that the Tractor Club had their vintage iron display show at Jubilee Farm, which is just down the road.
Right down the road. Yeah, totally.
And Eric Hawkinson was running that with his partner Wendy. And I show up with my old tractor and a bunch of old guys and some ladies, but Eric looked at me and he goes,
you're kind of young to be in like this antique tractor club. What do you think about working on the farm? And I was like, yeah, definitely. Let's do it. I had landscape. I knew about plants, and I loved machinery and turning wrenches. So everything kind of just fit together. I ended up working for Eric and Wendy for almost 4 years. And I think I was their first year-round employee.
Oh, wow. We were actually just out at Jubilee last night. My youngest son, played baseball with Micah, would be Eric's grandson, I think. And so the end of the year baseball celebration was out there at the farm. So,
those guys, David now owns the farm, and we get along quite well. And I think the reason for that is we have this tight little farming community, and we all have to stick together and help each other out. So sharing implements and griping about the weather and insects, money, it's something we all need to do from time to time. And it's nice to have a network to do it. But yeah, so I cut my teeth growing vegetables there. And then I was able to lease land towards Fall City, just a mile and a half south of there. And there was a landowner. There's lots of kind of retired briefcase ranchers or farmers. They were once lawyers or did something different, and they were able to scoop up land in the 80s. And one of these guys was leasing out property. So that's where I started.
And this is your current place still today?
Yeah, we're actually on a piece of property with a different landowner.
Oh, okay.
Where I started, it was not ideal. I was just so gung-ho, and this thought of this romantic vision of starting a farm. I didn't really think about the basics of what you need. And those include water, electricity, and some sort of structure. And this one barely had any of those. So I learned really fast about the mistakes that you can make. And when I first began farming, we encountered some of the biggest floods in history in the valley. So I was thrown into this like crazy environment of flooding and drought and all this stuff that we had to kind of learn how to deal with. And I look back at it now, and we haven't had nearly as much kind of crazy turmoil. But I was like, what am I doing? This is crazy stuff, this farming.
What a time to start.
Yeah, but I couldn't stop. I actually I approached the neighbor, and he had some higher land, a little bit less flood prone. And I asked him if I could lease some property, and he eventually said yes, which was great, because it's really prime growing ground next to the Snoqualmie River. And we started on 1 acre. I had a business partner for 3 years, and he ended up moving to Hawaii, starting a ginger beer company.
Oh, wow.
I'm still farming in the same place. So we started on 1 acre, and now I farm 30 acres. And we just expanded 10 more acres across the highway with a different landowner to expand into more grain production.
So, which I do want to get into that here in a little bit, specifically the grains, because I think that's one of the unique things that you're doing that certainly differentiates you from some of the other farmers in the valley, if not all of Western Washington. But can we come back to that?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. Basically, we've started growing mixed vegetables and selling direct at the farmer's market. My wife and I sold on Sundays. It was really tough to get into a market. We had a small CSA, and we were had this little overflow of product. And I tried to get into some Seattle markets, but there's a lot of competition. So we were able to get our foot in the door and sell at Lake Forest Park. That was our first market, and it was good. And, we made a tiny wooden sign with our farm name, and we were called Hand Farmed Organics at that point. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but I was having a good time doing it.
Now, did you have an off-farm job at the time as well? Or, I mean, to kind of keep it all going, I can't imagine that first farmer's market's going to pay the rent.
No, especially, I didn't really know what I was doing. Running a business is complicated, and you just kind of chip away at the things you know.
No, I tried to farm full time, and then had a seasonal off farm job in the winter. Yeah, a few different odd jobs here and there. I worked at Jubilee part time during the first couple of years also. Yeah, but now I farm full time and almost year round. We try to take about a month off, a couple weeks for vacation, but yeah, it doesn't snow like the East Coast, so we're able to and continue selling product all winter, and that's kind of where my crop plan and strategy has kind of shifted gears since when I started, focusing less on kind of that early spring summer window and more of the late summer, fall, and winter crops. And like I said, we were doing a lot of mixed vegetables and
Direct sales at the farmers markets. We were finally able to get into one of the Seattle farmers markets, and that was my goal, was to sell at one of the biggest markets in the city. So we sell at University Farmers Market.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and we've had a history of selling at a lot of different farmers markets, and they're great, but they have their downsides too. There's the just unpredictability of them, unreliable source of income, and yeah, it really fluctuates between markets.
Let me jump in on that just for a second, the farmer's market concept. Did you ever read the book? I think the author was Forrest Pritchard. I think it was basically something like How to Grow a Farmer or something like it. And his whole story was taking over his family's farm over on the East Coast, I think in Virginia. Started out by selling his produce and whatnot on the rural farmers markets. Had a hard time, couldn't get people to, really commit. And the long story short is the closer he got into DC, and then eventually in DC at that farmer's market, he was kind of able to sell everything for kind of whatever he wanted to sell it for, because the city, they kind of had the money and they had the desire to connect with the farm. Did you run into experience like that where as you got into the big city, what we're only 35, 40 minutes from Seattle, that had a big impact on what you guys were doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't read that book, but it sounds great. And yeah, very similar life experience as we've experimented with different crops and different markets. There's definitely benefit of selling in the heart of Seattle. You've got, and this is crucial, I think, to any successful farmers market, you have to have the public transportation. And Seattle's not great, but it does have a network of transportation that people can get to and from the market at. And they offer year-round markets. So people, visitors know that they're there, they've got good signage, and it creates a draw. And that's what makes it successful for the farmers. Something that drove me crazy is we sold at Issaquah for a number of years, and we also sold at Seattle, and they were on the same days. But the dedication that the market staff has in Seattle is night and day from any other market that I've experienced. They are there because they want the farmers to be there. They want the farmers to succeed. So in Seattle, at the Neighborhood Farmers Market Association, they really limit the amount of non-farm vendors. They want it to be a farmer's market. And I feel like on the east side and other markets, they need these extra vendors, craft vendors or prepared food vendors to draw people in. And it seems like a good idea, but people then just end up coming to the market to have lunch or dinner and sit in the grass. They're not really there to do their shopping. And that's what I like about the Seattle markets. They're like, come do your shopping here. Here's a bag, fill it up, spend money at each vendor. Don't go to the grocery store. This is where we need to be buying food. And it just comes across so much clearer. So there is a huge difference in shopping tendencies from the folks that live in Seattle and the folks that live on the east side or in smaller communities. Now, that's just a broad statement. We do have customers that every weekend drive from Issaquah or Fall City and go to the markets in Seattle, which is crazy to me. I mean, I probably wouldn't do that, but I respect it and I love it.
Well, and it's to your point, it's a totally different experience, whether it's the UW or Ballard or even some of the other ones. I mean, like you said, the farm literally is coming into the city, and the folks that are there shopping are filling up their grocery bag, and they're skipping PCC or Whole Foods or the neighborhood grocery store. To make sure that they get greens from a guy who grew them, 25 minutes down the street, that kind of thing. And that's a cool thing.
Yeah, and another really cool thing is that because it's a city where people come to visit from out of town. We get a lot of travelers that come to the market to see it, to shop. And there's folks that are always saying, like, we don't have a market like this where we live. And they come from DC or, Pennsylvania or California even. And I'm like, really? You don't have a market like this in California? It seems like that's where all the food is grown. That seems crazy.
Right.
Nothing like this. You guys have such a good array of things. And it always feels good when people say that. I feel like we got something good going on and the Market Association is doing something right.
I love that. Well, we could continue down that road of farmers markets, but I got more I want to cover with you. You said your farm was initially named, what did you call it?
Hand-farmed organics.
Hand-farmed organics, but now it's known as Steel Wheel Farm. What is the significance, either the change or the name? Because it's a cool name and a really simple but really, I think, cool and effective logo of a guy, presumably you, pushing, what looks like a steel wheel plow of some kind, through the field. But what kind of significance did you draw from that?
Yeah, I was sitting around with my business partner early in our business, and we decided to change the name to get rid of the organics part of it. And part of that was because we weren't certified organic, we were growing organic. We didn't want to mislead anybody, and I think that kind of made it harder to access some of the Seattle markets and stuff. So I thought about something that's catchy, that rhymes. A lot of people shop at the markets and they can't tell you which vendor they bought anything from. So that was number one. The name had to be kind of catchy. Steel wheel, it rhymes. We kept the same logo, the silhouette of the farmer pushing the wheel hoe, and we used the wheel hoes. We've got a bunch of them. So it's an old tool that has stayed in the tool shed, since it was created for all farmers. And it's kind of an homage to my love of old iron. All the old tractors started on steel wheels. So I'd love to have a steel wheeled tractor someday, but mine all have rubber tires.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's, keep the connection to how it was done for a long time, and again, really, really a kind of powerful, I don't want to overstate it, but it's just a really, powerful image of what it is that I think that your philosophy of farming, which I want to get into in a second, sort of comes through, and even that marketing piece, which I think is pretty valuable and probably has become quite recognizable in the area.
Yeah, and without a doubt, there isn't a week that goes by that somebody doesn't come up to me and go, my granddad used that wheel hoe, on his farm, or my family had those growing up. And so there's a connection made, and that's all it takes to open the door to a sale or to talk about food, that community connection.
I love that. Okay, that's cool. Thank you for sharing that part of the story. You mentioned in some of your marketing and your website and things that you believe that quality food, I'm going to try to quote you directly here, we believe that quality food begins with the farmer. Elaborate on that as a core belief, and how does that impact your day-to-day operations at Steel Wheel Farm?
Yeah.
Let me add something to that. Compared to maybe what Joe Public and how we've been operating as a community for the last, bunch of years, how, this seems to be even that much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to expand on that. My family really believes that food is medicine. We believe in eating healthy food. And as I've gotten into the food industry, more and more doors are open to what the food industry actually is. And a lot of it is quite scary. So from day one, I decided I wanted to grow organically. I didn't have a history of farmers telling me to farm this way. I had to carve my own path, and I chose not to handle chemicals and pesticides, to work with nature rather than against it. And because I had some training at Jubilee Farm, they farmed biodynamically. So we were into some like pretty crazy out there stuff. And I didn't necessarily want to farm that way, but organics seemed like the right path. And I believe wholeheartedly that a lot of problems that people have medically stem from their food choices. And there's a lot of evidence out there that there are residual chemicals in products, in food that we're eating. So I wanted to make it my mission to grow healthy food. And to do that, we need to take care of the soil. It's really great. There's a lot of new information coming out in the soil science world about the health of soil and that how it impacts the health of plants. And my eyes have been like really opened to this new awareness. And it's an exciting time to be a farmer. For instance, there's this company called Advancing Eco Agriculture, and they're doing a lot of research on bacteria and fungi and how they have this really intricate relationship with plant roots. And they're the key to feeding plants. So there's this whole symbiotic relationship that's created under the ground. And basically, chemical fertilizers are kind of like drugs for the plants. They get this boost of nutrients, and then they're kind of waiting for more. They get hooked on it. And it's kind of a false feeding. So by going the other way and creating a healthy ecosystem in your soil, you're building the blocks for long-term nutrient management. And in turn, you create these really healthy plants. And you can see over the years, as I've started, I believe that we've made our ground that we grow on healthier. And it's evident because the plants are larger, they're darker colored, they fruit better, and the insects seem to stay away from them a little bit more. We had a lot of insect issues when I first started, and we weren't using chemicals or synthetic fertilizers or anything, but the soil needed a lot of conditioning and to get it activated. And I think a lot of people don't realize what kind of investment it really takes with time and energy to prepare your soil to grow food. I've been working the same ground for almost 12 years now. And I'm just now, in the last couple of years, seeing like some major changes. And one of the things that I want to start adopting is doing tissue samples and sap analysis and doing bricks testing on the plants to really kind of prove the method and how that's working. I don't mean to get like weeds here. But,
no, it's good.
And I really do feel like food can be people's medicine. Like we don't need to be taking vitamins and popping pills for every ailment. I think just the healthy food is what we need.
Well, and where you're farming in the Snoqualmie Valley, I mean, historically is, amazing farmland, right? But if you don't take care of it, if you don't invest in that soil, you're not going to get the kind of fruit, literally, that you could if you managed it correctly or with the mind on its long-term health. Is that essentially what you're saying? Because we're spoiled a little bit in that this valley is so rich. However, humans, like we like to do, probably screwed up a little bit or a lot. And somebody like you and some of the other farmers, thank God, in the valley, are working hard to keep a mind on it, on the soil future, and then ultimately the food that comes out of it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely that. And, whether or not growers before me in my location, had different practices, I think there's always this improvement that needs to be done. Essentially, we're farming the ground, we're mining the soil by growing plants, harvesting them. So we need
well
to
said.
Nutrients, and you can strip the nutrients right out of the soil depending on if you're haying it and just cutting hay after hay and not putting something back into it. You're left with a really poor conditioned field.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think in your website, you talk about nutrient dense items. That's been something that my wife and I have talked about a lot as you get on these, YouTube and book and internet, trails on how there's vegetables that exist today that we can buy at the local market that maybe didn't even exist, before. Like they have gone through so many changes and hybridizations and whatever. But whether that's bad or good, the point I want to ask you about is the nutrient dense part. It feels like today's vegetables, if you go to QFC, Safeway, they're not packing the punch that probably what you're trying to do there at Steel Wheel and some of the other farmers in the area. Is that fair to say? Is there something wrong with the sort of big produce, we'll call it?
Yeah, I would say you're right on the nose with that. If you eat something from the grocery store and you're not tasting what you think it should taste like, there is something missing, right?
Like buying a tomato in January?
There's a reason we have taste buds. Your body is telling you that tomato tastes like a tomato because it's got the right nutrients in it, or that cucumber tastes like a cucumber. And if it doesn't taste like anything, then it's nothing but filler. And I think there's a lot of misconception out there. A head of broccoli is not equal to the head of broccoli next to it. And it's unfortunate because food isn't marketed that way. And I think people would buy produce and food a lot differently if they were able to differentiate between a large corporation farm that's maybe doesn't have those regenerative practices versus a small farm that's really caring for their ground and working on growing healthy produce.
So your investment in the soil on your farm at Steel Wheel, that's where your commitment is to bring in the nutrients sort of back into some of those base vegetables and fruits and different things that you're growing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Applying compost, and I have a bigger space. I'm not a tiny farm, and I'm not a big farm. We have maybe 8 acres of vegetables, 10 acres of grain, and then some acreage of cover crops to rotate in and out of production. But even managing an acre or two and building that organic matter and the nutrient density that the soil requires takes time and a lot of energy and money. And we're not there yet by any means, but, by practicing better regenerative practices,
sure.
Plant crops. Some farms have animals in rotation. That's something I would like to do eventually. We used to have animals on our farm, but we simplified our operation a little bit the last couple of years. So I'm thinking about it more and how we can, even better heal the land and
sure.
replenish plants. Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. And a lot of people don't know about it. But going back to buying the produce at the store, I think it would be really amazing if folks could differentiate whether it's a regeneratively grown label on something, or everybody has a phone in their pocket. if you were able to take a picture of produce and use refractive light energy to kind of simply analyze the product, the carrots or the broccoli, and be able to see some of those better nutrients or vitamins on your device.
Well, that'd be cool.
Sure change my my buying habits.
Well, 100%. I mean, it changed it. Like if people just pay, that would be amazing. Does that exist?
It's really close.
Okay.
There's prototypes out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it would make sense because we can put our iPhone or whatever up to a plant and it can tell us what it is. What is that flower? So I imagine that's the next step. That's amazing. Well, that would be great. And hopefully, would make a dramatic impact on people's health and their well-being and certainly for their family. You guys are known for a handful of specific things that you grow. Your arugula comes to mind, right? You've got some commentary, I think, about that and some other items. And then I want to shift into your cool project with the grains and things. But what are some of the items that kind of stand out or hallmark, products that come out of your soil?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the product line is different every year, but we do have some long-time accounts with some restaurant buyers, wholesale buyers, and some of those products include the arugula. We still grow that. We grow spicy lettuce mix, or it's called mild and wild mix. Folks really love that at the farmers market.
Can I just tell you real quick, I love arugula. Like it is my absolute favorite. And we have we just have a garden, okay? Because we mostly have animals here. And man, we just can't get it to not bolt. Like we're just not paying attention enough or whatever, but it bums me out so much because all I want is an arugula with radicchio salad with some balsamic and olive oil and maybe a few pine nuts on it. And I want it all to come from my garden. And it depresses me that I can't do it.
I can help you with that.
Please. Yeah. Anyway, keep going. Yeah.
There's a few like crops in my mind every year that I'm like, I got to grow this. This is like quintessential farmer stuff. And I feel like melons are one of them. Like if I grow melons and pull it off in the Northwest, I'm a farmer now. Like I've done it. So I always attempt to grow watermelons. Some years it works out. Some years we eat some questionable melons. But it's really fun growing them, and it's such a pleasure in the summertime to have a fresh watermelon or cantaloupe. Totally. We grow heirloom tomatoes. We've always grown heirlooms in a high tunnel, some outside. And folks love those. And our season's getting a little bit longer, it seems like. So sometimes we have heirloom tomatoes into November, which is really crazy.
You're saying because of the weather staying warmer longer, essentially?
Longer, and it's been a little drier in the fall.
Right.
So we'll have pumpkins and tomatoes side by side.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. The vegetables, it's always a mix. We've done a few kind of rare or oddity things like black radishes, sunchokes,
rutabagas, different types of daikon radish. Folks in Seattle seem to like those.
That's interesting because daikon tends to be, I think, historically an Asian cuisine vegetable, right? You'd go to some of the Asian markets and you could probably find that pretty quickly. Whereas some of our, is that true? Is there some is that sort of niche-y in that sense?
Go ahead and say that again. I think we had a glitch.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I was saying, you mentioned daikon. Traditionally, we have a lot of Asian heritage here. That would tend to be in that culture, correct?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely quite a few Japanese and Chinese, Asian shoppers at the markets. Being on the West Coast, we have a lot of influence from Asian cuisine. So those crops do sell much better. I don't think I could sell, 5 pounds of daikon radish at the Issaquah Farmers Market. No, but we sell like 50 pounds every week, in the fall.
That thing you dubbed.
At UW. Oh,
amazing.
We've dabbled in chicories. We've had some radicchio. It's a little bit harder of a sale for some folks. I love it. It's a cool crop. It's in its own family.
Right.
So it's really nice in the rotation, and it holds in the field. And that's one of the key things I've been looking for is like, what can I grow that can sit in the field in the fall for a long time? And we can, harvest it for 30, 60 days and not, some of the summer stuff you got to pick every 2 days.
Right. You got to get it in a cooler or you got to get it sold and off your campus quick.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I've always wanted to ask this question, and it wasn't on my original list, but, if you look across the latitude of our Earth, is it true, or am I just reaching here, that we are a similar climate to, we meaning, Western Washington, Puget Sound, to places like Ireland and Scotland and England and places like that, where what they can grow well, we should be able to grow well and vice versa? Or is that just really short-sighted and too simplistic?
Yeah, I think there is some truth to that, right? We have similar daylight and the seasons are similar. I think what's a little bit different on the Northwest coast is that we've got really intense microclimates. So we're dealing with strange weather patterns. We get a lot of influence from what they call the blob. If you've heard of that, it's the cold body of water off of the coast. And if it moves north, then we get more tropical rainstorms. And if it moves further south, we get more snow and colder weather. So there's that. And then we're right up against the mountains in a valley. So we get frosts at random, times. We also get really hot, a lot hotter than Seattle. And then we get crazy wind because we're right next to a mountain pass. So there's differences there, the amount of rainfall. But, temperature and moisture, really like crucial things for growing food. And we would be able to grow more here, probably, similar to other European countries, if we had more sunlight in the winter. We don't get it. Too many clouds. So that holds us back from growing cucumbers in December.
Right. Good point. Well, thank you for speaking of that. Well, I want to talk a little bit about this grain program. You've got greens and grains. We've covered some of the greens. I don't know about, Western Washington does not. I grew up in Spokane. Okay. So I was just north of the Palouse. And so when I, my childhood was the minute you drove 5 minutes out of town, you were in wheat fields and there was grains everywhere. And then you got into central Washington, you were doing orchards and now grapes and all those things. But I never really thought of Western Washington being a place where you could grow any grain outside of maybe some hay for the cows to eat. And even that is not considered, at least in Western Washington, to be the most nutrient dense. Usually you have to supplement that with some alfalfa, probably from Eastern Washington, to make sure that your cows are happy and healthy and so on. But you've tackled some things over the last couple of years that I want you to talk about, because if I'm not mistaken, I was in a local butcher shop and I'm pretty sure I saw what it looked like oats that I could buy from your farm. And I just did not think that was possible. So tell us about that.
Yeah. I started thinking about grains a few years ago, mostly because we were planting a lot of cover crops, fall cover crops. And because we're in a floodplain, we've got to cover the soil in the wintertime or we lose it. We could get a flood and all our topsoil could just go right down into the ocean or to our neighbor's farm. And I don't want that. We spend too much time and money on that soil. So some of the cover crops we'd let grow to fruition. A lot of rye or winter like winter wheats, barley, vetch, peas. And I started thinking, I'm like, man, I'm spending a lot of money on these cover crop seeds. we got to figure out a way to like harvest them and then save seeds so we can plant them again. And then like shortly after that, I was thinking like, well, if we can harvest, these winter cover crop seeds, like why not plant grain and things that people can eat? So I started just looking into other types of grains and pulses that might be possible. And when I was at Jubilee Farm, Eric was kind of getting excited about growing grain himself. And he was working with WSU to do a couple of trial plots. They brought in a hand thresher, and we threshed wheat one day. That was really cool. And he was getting really close to like purchasing this combine and could never like pull the trigger on getting it to the farm for whatever reason. And it didn't really happen. So, when I started my own farm and started thinking about grain, I started getting excited. And part of what's great about our valley is we've got this small, but, a lot of diverse little farming operations that are always talking to each other. We're all part of the Snow Valley Tilth organization, or getting together at the conferences around the state and talking about stuff. And at the time, Carnation Farms had a general manager that was trying to spend some grant money on a project. And we were brainstorming together, and she was wondering about, buying a combine. And I said, that's a great idea. So I said, I'll help you look, because I'm interested also. So I helped them find a combine in Snohomish, and I went and picked it up on my birthday and got to drive it back to Carnation, which was like a great birthday present for me. And that was kind of the beginning. And so I was thinking about, grain crops that I could grow on the farm. That'd be a good rotation. Oats are pretty easy to grow. And, I'm new to grain growing. I'm not an Eastern Washington farmer. I don't really know anything about grain. But I know I eat a lot of oats, and I love bread, all that stuff. So I was like, I'll just, find some organic seed and throw it in the ground. And of course, there's a whole set of tools that you need to grow grain, which is a learning experience all on its own. A lot of what I call THTs, tractor hunting trips. And I dragged my partner, my wife, Kim, along with me. We went down to Mount Rainier to pick up a antique grain drill. It was just over $1,000, and that's what got me going. I was able to disc up a piece of ground, drill some grain. I ended up finding this. I think it's a pretty unique variety of naked oats. It's a hulless type, so it doesn't need the extra threshing to remove the hull. You can basically combine it and clean it, and then you could grind it up in your coffee grinder if you want, or in your grain mill at home. Or I bought a roller mill, and I make rolled oats, and it's pretty straightforward. But they turned out that this variety was really tasty, and I called the farm back after growing it a year, and I was like, "Hey, I really like these oats. Like, what variety do you guys is this? Where did this come from?" And they basically just told me like they've been growing it for decades, and they don't know what strain it is, but it's adapted to their region and their farm, and it has a slightly darker color and a little bit more richness to it. And I thought, well, that's cool. I'll just start saving seed and plant it every year. And hopefully it'll kind of adapt to our growing region and have these unique characteristics to it. Why not, right? Turns out, WSU is doing this whole marketing campaign for barley, and how barley has these different flavonoids depending on the region they're grown in. So they're trying to create this market like wine. So beer now has this profile differentiating it from other beers and, from different regions. So I'm thinking, well, barley has this, why don't, other grains are going to have this too. Let's create something unique. So that's what I've been doing. It's just kind of plugging along, saving seed, trying to save the best quality seed that I can to replant the next year, and taking good care of it, trying to grow a really healthy oat too. This morning I took a bricks test of the oats that I planted in this new field, and I'm starting to record and note what I'm finding. So my goal is to make it better every year.
And the bricks test, that's commonly used in fermentation, right? In checking your beer as you're making it at home.
And you can test your beer, you can test fruit, you can test meat, pretty much anything that you can squeeze a drop of juice out of and put it on a glass plate. You can look at it. And what a high bricks number might tell you is that the plant is doing healthier or doing better, and will have a lesser chance of getting infected by disease or insects, and that means it's healthier.
That's amazing.
Healthier for us.
My little tool when I used to brew my own beer, I didn't realize it could do that much more.
Yeah, and these are like kind of new revelations that I'm having and learning. I listen to other great podcasts about regenerative farming, and I'm learning more and more, and talking with folks in the industry. I just attended the Organic Seed Growers Conference in Corvallis this year for the first time.
Oh wow.
So I'm growing seeds all of a sudden. So now I'm like part of the seed community, and got connected with a couple of seed companies that want me to grow vegetable seed too. So kind of shifting the farm model a little bit, focusing more on seeds. And now that I have a machine, this combine, it's a 1989 John Deere 7720 turbo, and it's the only John Deere I own. I'm an Oliver guy.
Yeah, right.
Anymore, so I can't find them all. But it's a cool machine. It's still, it's got this vintage quality to it, but it has a tape deck in it.
Nice.
Yeah. And
so it's state of the art when it came out.
Yeah, but you can still fix everything, It doesn't have the crazy sensors that the new ones do, and
right.
I hear horror stories about new tractors. So I'm glad it works, and I am also looking for a mentor about combining, because I don't have grandpa or grandma to go to tell me how to run a combine well.
Right.
Kind of learning.
They're all over there. They're just about, across the mountains and head south a little bit, and they're all still doing the work. I was just over there a couple of weeks ago picking up our little Gloucestershire old spot pigs, and they're in the Palouse, and the guys are still doing the work. They're still doing the work. Well, this is awesome. Are there other grains that you're experimenting with or in production and things like that?
So in the past, I focus more on spring planted crops. Because of the flooding issues, I'm a little worried about losing some to disease or, moisture. Grain really doesn't like that too much.
Sure.
But also just to add in real quick, I've been able to successfully harvest grain for 4 seasons now. And my first season, I learned a lesson. I harvested it too early. You go out and collect a sample and test the moisture on it. Well, what I didn't know is when you harvest organic grain, there's a lot of organic weed seed and other stuff that gets in there, and that all has moisture. So all of a sudden, your grain absorbs the moisture, and you got to dump it all out on plastic and rake it around to dry it out in the sun. So I've learned that patience is the key. We've had some warmer days in September's, and waiting is usually the key. But I've dabbled with the oats, some spring white wheat, some spring hard red wheat, and
because you've produced flour that you can bake with. Did I see that on the shelf? Yeah.
After I left Jubilee, David's dad bought a stone mill from Austria.
Oh my gosh!
A stone mill. It must be like 20-inch stones. They're a synthetic stone.
So they last a little bit longer, and they do a little bit different of a grinding job. And it has a sifter attached to it too. So you can sift out hulls or impurities. But yeah, I've been able to use that and mill flour fresh for the market. So
And how does that loaf of bread taste?
it's great. My wife just actually baked some tonight. So
Amazing.
we're eating some freshly milled flour bread.
Oh, I can't wait to get some in my hands. I like to make bread, and I can't believe I haven't bought it yet. But there's a few places that you can find your stuff. I mean, but tell the folks, because we only have a few minutes left, where can people find you, find your CSA if you're still running one, the farmers markets we touched on? Like, how can people connect with you and the great job that you and your wife and everybody else that's working with you are doing?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned before, we're at the University Farmers Market on Saturdays, and we usually bring all our products there. We also have a farm store in North Bend at the Tollgate Barn, and that's owned and kind of managed by the Parks Department of North Bend. But they refurbished this homestead and old vintage barn. It's modern now. It's got concrete that's not cracked, and it's beautiful. So we have a market there Saturdays and Sundays.
Oh, wow.
And we have our products from our farm. We also partner with other farms, so we bring in their products. And then we're getting organic fruit brought in from Eastern Washington, eggs, duck eggs, all kinds of good stuff. We also offer our Grains and Greens CSA membership. So that's a free choice CSA. People can go online and order what they want every week, and that's what we pack and deliver them.
You're saying they can essentially shop for what they want. This is not the type of CSA where, hey, whatever we just harvested that week is what you get, and you don't throw a fit.
Just like that. It's kind of a traditional CSA in the sense that we take the payment up front so we can afford all our costs, and then we let you choose as a customer. We're pairing these grains with the vegetables in hopes that people will have a more well-rounded diet, and try to fill those gaps and needs in people's houses. And then if somebody's looking for like a bulk amount of the rolled oats or some flour, I'd be happy just to answer an email at steelwheelfarm@gmail.com, and be happy to fill an order and figure out delivery or pickup.
Is there a couple of restaurants that you can share that are your customers? And if you don't want to, that's fine. But where people can say, "Oh, hey, I know who grew that," or "I heard the guy on the thing." Is there any of that kind of fun connection that people might find interesting?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a pretty good relationship with some local eateries around here up in Snoqualmie, the Saints and Scholars.
Oh, sure.
They're buying some oats. I'm trying to get them to do some porridge for their breakfast.
How fun would that be?
They also buy the arugula and kale from us. We sell some stuff to the juice bar in North Bend called Pressed on Main.
Sure.
It's got it, making really good gluten-free pastries and juices and good stuff with good produce. And then we've been selling to a restaurant in Kirkland called Daru Market.
Great place.
That's from the beginning, and they're super supportive of local agriculture. They buy a ton of food from all, our farm and other farms in the area, and I can't, appreciate that enough. So yeah.
I love that. Can I ask you a couple of questions for fun that have nothing to do with farming as we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. Who is one person or a couple of people that have had some of the most profound impact on you personally and or your farming experience?
Yeah. I would say my mom. My mom has had a big impact on me. Her work ethic and her green thumb growing up has definitely inspired me to work hard in my life and be outside.
That's awesome.
I probably haven't thanked her enough, but she definitely comes to mind.
That's cool. That's good. How about a book or podcast or something like that you've read either recently or has made an impact in your life up to this point that you would want to tell other people about?
Yeah, my favorite podcast right now, it's the Regenerative Agriculture podcast. And it's pretty technical at times, but I really get a kick out of listening to these soil scientists and people that are making better food.
Nice.
So to me, there's a book that I read by Tom Quinn. I think it's called Grain by Grain. He's a grain farmer in Montana, talks about the toxic air from glyphosate. And he is, he's been an organic grower for a while, and he grows kamut. So he's created this whole kamut industry in Montana and created jobs, really great food products that he's shipping to Europe and feeding his community. And
oh my word.
Additional. And I'll just say, hearing about that and our little farming community, there's a lot of similarities. Like, farmers bring really good things to communities, and we need to keep supporting our small farmers because we create this group of other small businesses and we support each other. Just like what you were saying, the meat shop down the road buys oats from me, and we support them too. So there's this really great network around farms, and it's sad that a lot of farms are disappearing, and we have to change that. We need more.
No, absolutely. Well, Ryan, this has been a pleasure. It's been awesome to get to know you and to hear more about your story. What is the website or phone number? You mentioned an email address that we can leave behind as we wrap up.
Yeah, you can find our website at www.steelwheelfarm.com, and email address is steelwheelfarm@gmail.com.
And people can check in with you anytime, ask questions, find out more information, all the things.
Well, thank you, Michael. I really appreciate chatting with you. And, I'm always happy to talk farming. Pretty passionate about it, and that's what I do every day of my life. So happy to talk again.
Well, would love to. And we'll see you around, I'm sure, in the community, and your reputation definitely precedes you, and you're so well respected around here. And I know my family really appreciates what you're doing in the Valley and in our community. So it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you this evening.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Take care, Ryan. Well, that wraps up another episode of Irish Mike's Farm Table Podcast. Thank you for supporting me, and don't forget to subscribe and rate on your favorite platform. I would love it if you gave me a 5-star rating. If you like what you hear, also feel free to share with a friend. Make sure you head over to lakeshorefarmstead.com to find out more information about all the things we are doing around our farm. You can also find the show notes to this and each episode on the podcast tab on the website. Thank you for sharing in the conversation around the farm table.